I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar titled Talent Management, Training to Stay Competitive. I'm going to hand things over to our featured presenter today. He's no stranger to our webinars and an experienced leadership executive coach, Jeremy Gray. Jeremy, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that introduction, and good morning to everybody. This morning, we're going to talk about something that I'm extremely passionate about. We're going to talk about keeping your talent and training for the competitive edge. So a little bit background about myself. I've been in the management and coaching space for about 15 years. I've done management consulting for private and public, as well as nonprofit sectors. I specialize in helping organizations developing executives, managers, and workforce through leadership and performance management. And I'm passionate about growth, both personal and professional. So what is talent management? This isn't a new term, but one of the things we face is an evolving workforce. In 2020, through the pandemic, we learned many challenges that showed us we needed to understand what talent management is. So to define talent management refers to the required human capital and the anticipation of that human capital for an organization and the planning of meeting those needs. There was a gentleman named Peter Drucker who is considered one of the best management consultants in modern history, and he had a great quote. The quote is this: "Culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner." And we talk about strategy. Strategy is made up of people, and that people in your culture come from our workforce. So today, our objectives are identifying what priorities the new workforce desires, developing an understanding of investing in the modern talent pool, shifting from a generational focus to a growth focus, and equipping your staff with leadership growth opportunities. I don't know about you, but one of the things that I did in 2019, towards the end of 2019, I evaluated my year, and I told many people that I wanted to have 2020 vision. Well, the comical thing now in 2021 that I realize is that 2020 vision is generally used for the rear view mirror. Most of us probably did not anticipate a pandemic or businesses being shut down, going to a fully remote workforce, or to be honest, all the rapid changes that we faced over the last 15 months. One of the things that has bubbled to the top and come out from this period of time is that in our current marketplace, we have many talent shortages. I don't know about you, but I go into many organizations, and one of the challenges they have faced is making sure they have the right talent and keeping the talent that they have, and also capitalizing on finding new talent to continue to build their culture. One of the things talent management specialists and groups of HR have told me is that we have people entering into their organization that are not prepared, or they weren't exactly perfect to the role, and they've had to alter and change. Now, one of the things that we'll be doing throughout this presentation is bringing some information and taking just a few moments to unpack that data, but also creating some strategic steps to be able to fill those gaps and hopefully provide great takeaways for you and your organization, for you to really manage your talent as well as attract the talent to enhance your organization. And one of the organizations that performs research is this place called McKinsey & Company. And what they have stated from a 2019 research is 40% of American employers cannot find people with entry-level skills. We take that just a little bit deeper, and 60% of employers state the workforce have a lack of preparation. So that means we have some obstacles to face. One of the obstacles that we have is to navigate the changing generations, and another obstacle we have to face is filling in the gaps as organizations where those gaps used to be fulfilled by education from college and high school. It's not just getting a degree, but there are new certifications and trainings that are available as our rapid change in workplace and the evolution of being agile and being able to pivot quickly illuminate many possibilities and gaps that we have in any industry. So what programs are available to provide solutions for technical and essential skills training? Business workforce development is an upskilling plan that will support success now and the future. Job training and workforce development have become a collaborative effort inside and outside of businesses. I will tell you, when I talk to the talent management or decision makers on hiring practices and building and designing their teams and organizations, the agencies within, they're worried about succession planning as well as making sure they have people that will enter into their organization that will be able to fill roles that are needed. One of the questions I love to ask those organizations is, have they ever conducted a needs analysis to see what skills are needed that they can ensure those skills are accomplished through those new roles and new employees? So I want to talk about generations. You know, I'm a futurist, and what a futurist is somebody that studies history to watch trends, and from those trends be able to find some level of prediction. When I speak about generations, I usually talk about 6 generations in all. Now, the oldest generation was the greatest generation, and I love to study them because about every 100 years we have 5 generations, and that greatest generation is where most people remember from the Great War and the war to end all wars. That's World War I. But that generation is kind of past, and they're generally in the retirement space and not in our workforce. They still provide valid information, but I'm not going to spend time talking about them today. The next generation is the silent generation, and they are traditionally the folks that are World War II, were born in 1940s to 1950s, right around that area, right before the baby boomers. And they're also leaving the workforce. So we won't spend any time today, but we'll talk a little about their information. Then we talk about the baby boomers. The baby boomers are traditionally those that are looking towards retirement, and they've been in the workforce for 40 plus years. The next generation will be the Gen Xers, and Gen Xers are ranging from 1965 to 1980. And then from 1981 to 1996, we have the millennial generation. And then also we have this new generation of Gen Z. Now, I'm going to go back to the baby boomer generation, and I'm going to ask this question: what are the priorities of the generational workers? So the Pew Research Council did a social study, and they found the top 5 priorities for baby boomers were these: was work ethic, being respectful, having values or morals, being considered a baby boomer, and they consider themselves 5% smarter than other generations. Then we move to Gen X. Gen X, one of their priorities was technology use, then a work ethic, being traditional. They believed that they were smarter than the other generations and were also respectful. Now, millennials, by the way, are traditionally in your middle to the beginning levels of the executive staff. Those are your age ranges. So people that are coming into their 40s and in their early to mid 30s are traditionally your millennials, and their priority was technology use. They were influenced by pop culture and found that a priority. They were considered more tolerant. They also considered themselves smarter, and clothing was a priority for them for influence. Now, what's interesting, as I've done my study on these generations from the Pew Research Center and other areas, almost every generation believes they're smarter than the other generation, which always makes me smile. And I would love to tell you a quick story. When I was in management a few years ago, I had about 300 people I was in charge of. And after a while, I was very frustrated with some of the people that were working for me. And so I was at a local coffee shop and I was having a cup of coffee. And honestly, I was complaining to a friend of mine about how people were lazy and weren't as smart. And I had this gentleman, and I will tell you, if you can kind of envision him, he was very experienced in life. I would believe he was at least 90 years old, and he smiled and turned around and said, "Son, can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Absolutely. I'd love to hear what you have to say, because I believe people that have experience will be able to share some wisdom." So he said, "Son," I said, "I've been around a while, and everybody always complains about the last generation." I thought about it for a moment, and I said, "Well, sir, how do you mean?" He says, "Well, son, I was born in 1919. He said, and we had the flappers, and everybody made the flappers. And then we had big bands. Then we had rock and roll through the 50s. And then the 60s and 70s, we had a couple different revolutions, with sexual revolution and the music revolution. And then 1980s, you had," he said, "I don't understand the 1980s. And said, "You had big hair bands, and then 1990s." And quickly I learned that this gentleman in front of me was a godsend. He was somebody that really showed to me that I needed not to complain about a generation, but try to find their value. So one of the things that conversation from 12 years ago that led to me is that I needed to learn how to engage people from this generation. And one of the things I want to share with you today is how to engage the top talent from the workforce pools, specifically the two largest talent pools, and that's the millennial generation and the Gen Z generation. And what's interesting about Gen Z is their priorities are truly aligning and mirroring the millennial generation. So the millennials and Gen Zs provide us a large enough sample to be able to tap into what they truly desire and be able to capture that top talent. So one of the things I love to talk to people is they say, "Hey, Jeremy, this person's lazy." And I said, said everybody's had some level of laziness. And let's talk about work ethic and talk about employee engagement. Now, one of the takeaways I'd love for you to have is this book. It's called The Power of Positive Reinforcement from Dr. Aubrey Daniels. Now, full disclosure, I'm a behaviorist by training. I do organizational behavior management and performance management. So Dr. Daniels has had a significant impact in my life, both personally and professionally. And one of the things that Dr. Daniels says is to provide information, to provide reinforcement, or another way to say that is provide a reward for when somebody does something well. And what will happen is you will engage employees. And when you engage them with something they desire, we create this thing we like to call initiative. So when we talk about initiative, the Gallup survey states that 87% of millennials state that professional growth and career development are important to them and the organizations they choose to work for. So my question to you right now is, does your organization or do you have a growth or career development plan? And if you don't, that's completely okay, because here in just a few moments, we're going to go over how to create not only a career development plan, but also a leader learning development plan. Carol Dweck is considered one of the foremost experts on mindset and growth. One of the things that she has shared with the world is from her books is the difference between a growth mindset, and a fixed mindset. So one of the questions I'd love to ask you is, what do you think you have? So if you do me a favor and just take a moment and reflect, do you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset? So what is a growth mindset? Obviously on the screen it says a growth mindset is the belief that an individual's most basic abilities and skills can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. A fixed mindset is the belief that an individual's basic abilities and skills, their intelligence and their talents, are fixed traits. Well, in the prior slide, I told you that 87% of millennials, and then the slide before that, I said that Gen Z is reflective of millennials and has the same desire. 87% of millennials and also Gen Zs desire development. They desire growth. One of the things the education space has really focused on in the last 25 years is this term called lifelong learning. Through many different studies, they have learned that employees entering into the workforce are not accurately or adequately prepared to start entry-level positions. Through the lifelong learning perspective and using growth as a focus, what happens is we start developing employees to be able to become solutions-based and not just focus on problems. If we develop a growth mindset within organizations, what seems to happen is we develop an ROI in organizations. And I will tell you, within the organizations I have done some consulting for, they say, Jeremy, at first we didn't have the buy-in, but once we started developing growth, we were amazed at our ROI. For example, coaching provides an 8-to-1 ratio of ROI. For every dollar invested, you have an $8 return. Now, Carol Dweck concluded that individuals who believe they can develop their talents through hard work, good strategies, and input from others have a growth mindset. These individuals are likelier to achieve more than those with fixed mindsets because they put more energy into learning and are less concerned about working smart. Now, I have a question for you, and obviously this is another reflection question. When's the last time you did something for the first time? When was the last time you did something for the first time? Whenever we start something, a new thing, we're never good. There's a gentleman named Michael Hyatt that states that all great speakers were bad speakers first. And he quotes that from other speakers from yesteryear. No matter where we're at in our life, whenever we're learning something new, it should take a certain amount of time. So people want to say, well, Jeremy, what's the amount of time? Most people are familiar with Dr. Stephen Covey and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Well, he states that it takes 21 days to establish a habit and 2 years to establish a lifetime habit. What they have started to learn with Dr. Caroline Leaf, she has showed that 66 days it takes for a habit to really grow and take effect. So when we're ever starting to grow in an organization, give it 66 days for it really to take effect. How are we able to identify what truly is growing and what isn't? Well, we need to be able to be strategic. We have to be able to understand and navigate different types of plans. So I want to talk about 2 different plans. We're going to talk about a learning development plan as well as a professional development plan. Most people I've done coaching with have a professional development plan, and so we're going to use the professional development plan as a template in organizing a learning plan. A professional development plan traditionally has 5 specific areas they focus on. The very first one is the current situation. The second piece of a professional development plan are career goals. The third piece are identifying skill gaps. The fourth step, creating actionable steps. And the fifth one are the evaluation. Now, some of you may say, Jeremy, I know that. And I say, absolutely, there's many things that we know. My question back to you is, how well are you doing your own professional development plan? Those that are growth minded, and like I said about the generations of millennials and Gen Zs, 87% desire a growth plan. They desire a learning development plan as a byproduct of being lifelong learners. So developing a learning plan for your organization and establishing continuity and being able to identify those needs are very similar to a professional development plan. A professional development plan understands the current situation. So what I'd like for you to do, if you're able to, I'd like for you to write down these steps and then write down a piece for each of this plan and see how well it fits in your organization. So talking about a learning plan, what is the current situation? Does your organization have a learning plan? If your organization does not have a learning plan, what is one area you would like to see your organization do better at in developing growth or developing skills? So if you would do me a favor and write current situation and that skill. That is the beginning of a needs analysis. And so the second step is identifying some strategic areas that you might have areas of need or possibility of growth. So you might say current situation is to engage the organization in developing our team, our divisions, our agency, or organization to be able to fill those gaps of those people who have 40% or 60% that are not either prepared or equipped for those entry level or even management positions. One of the things many people are not aware is when you get to management or executive levels, people have been able to rise to the ranks through performance and through accomplishment. When you become a manager or an executive, you must begin to start delegating those tasks, being able to see vision and be able to lift that vision and support the values of the organization. So you have current situation in your learning plan, you have your needs analysis, and through that needs analysis, you'll identify what is called a skills gap. That skills gap gives you the opportunity to advertise and retain and find talent. Say, hey, we need people that are good at this, X, Y, or Z. And if you're not able to attract those people, you might also be able to develop your organization's culture and the people within your culture. The fourth step after current situation, needs analysis, skills gap, is identify how do you want to deliver. There's many different platforms and methodologies on developing or delivering information. There are organizations like New Horizons that deliver this content. You might have an internal team. There's exterior organizations. You might have training. You may have coaching. Understanding the skills gap and how to deliver will help you figure out who to deliver. So your learning development plan is your current situation, a needs analysis, skills gap, identifying the how to deliver, then the who to deliver, and evaluate. And again, the how to is it internal or external? Is it a person within the team, or is it going to be an external organization? And the last piece is evaluate. One of the things I highly encourage everybody when we're talking about talent is allowing your organization and the people within your organization to let them know how well they're doing and providing them information on what they're doing well, and provide plans for them to grow on the areas they can use some improvement. So a learning development plan isn't that much different than a professional development plan. We have to marry those two and have people both develop their own professional development plan and develop growth. That will help with your needs analysis, and also do that learning development plan within your organization so you can identify skills and gaps and create a growth mindset. Now, the other thing that really shows is over time, every generation believes they're smarter than the other. And so when you talk about growth, you can use the words that we're trying to help improve your knowledge, because we believe everybody to be smart. So we can capitalize, say, hey, we know that you're smart. We're trying to expand your knowledge so you're able to really expand their individual portfolio, as well as be able to leverage and be able to use the talent management within your organization to accomplish all the goals and objectives and accomplish the KPIs, if you will, of an organization. So one of the things that you can do is that sometimes we have skills needs that are not able to work within an organization. So sometimes we hire external people. Now, one of the things I hear is that whenever I go and deliver is I'll talk to the manager, said, I've been saying that for 6 months. Sometimes that new voice is well worth the investment. And what you can do is continue to cultivate the education, the training, the growth within your organization. When you hire an organization, develop your team in key learning areas, you get the best of the best. And what happens is we're able to navigate those challenges that we've seen in other organizations that might make you feel better knowing that you're not alone. Now, one thing I'd like to highlight here is that training is for skills, but coaching is for performance. So what do I mean by that? So training is learning something that is observable. For example, looking at a tape measure, being able to type at a certain proficiency, being able to deliver a presentation, being able to use a system, a new process, and understand how to navigate all the challenges and methods and key pieces of a new system, like a customer relationship manager or an advertising piece, a new operations report. That is for training. Coaching is, once a person has learned the skills, is to continue to evaluate and develop that deeper level of knowledge where they become proficient. That's why most people in the world have professional coaches, are exceptionally successful. If you look at any sports team, if you look at any executive team, they have both training and coaching. So create an organization focused on professional growth and career development will attract the new generation of the workforce. So I've just got a couple more things to talk about before we wrap up today, probably about 5 to 6 more minutes. And so in conclusion, we've identified what priorities the new workforce desires. Now, I want to spend just a few minutes in each of these areas before we go to our question and answer period. One of the questions I love to ask people is, what does the word success mean to you? So what would a successful identification of new workforce desires mean to you? We've talked about the priorities of organizations and the new workforce, that 87% of Gen Z and millennials desire growth. They desire professional and personal development. So identifying those priorities and how to deliver will help you not only retain your key talent, but also create a culture that is attractive to the cream of the crop, the best of the best. We developed an understanding of investing in the modern talent pool. One of the things I hear oftentimes, I wish it was like it was yesteryear. I will tell you that most of us wish we did not experience the pandemic, but we had many learning opportunities over the last 15 months. One of the best learning opportunities I have found through organizations is they found they can move much faster at a much quicker pace than they ever thought possible. One of my mentors is a guy named John Maxwell, and he states it isn't the big that will beat the small in today's marketplace. It's the fast that will beat the slow. So the quicker we're able to develop growth, what will happen is exponential results will happen and will become faster, more efficient and effective, and therefore being productive in our space. A growth-focused mindset in attracting and retaining talent. One of the byproducts of being a lifelong learner for the last 25 years is it's developed this growth-focused mindset. What we're trying to do with this growth-focused mindset in this presentation today is provide an opportunity to say is there are many avenues that will provide you an opportunity to retain talent. Doing a webinar, doing some leadership, or I like to say essential skills. Some people call them soft skills. Finding that skills need in a technology space or an engineer space. Working on public speaking. So no matter what, we're identifying our next steps. We need to identify our next steps for a leadership growth plan, from your learning development and your professional development pieces. If we match those two up, what will happen over time is that you will retain the best talent for your culture. And like I talked about at the very beginning of our presentation today, Peter Drucker, one of the greatest management consultants in our modern history, says this: culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And so I want to just talk about a couple more things, and then I will pass back to Mike. Is that there's many opportunities for you today, and New Horizons is a phenomenal organization that will open up doors and opportunities to attract the absolute best talent for your organization. One of the things I've learned through my journey is those organizations that are able to act fast and be able to grow quickly and correctly with the focus on developing on their culture really navigated the last year very well, and they're set up for a fast start as we reopen. So Michael, I want to say thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to pass the mic back to you, and if there's any questions and answers, I'll absolutely love to answer them.
Great, thank you so much, Jeremy. Yes, as he mentioned, if anyone has any questions, please take a moment to type them into the questions box and we'll get to them shortly. And if you're interested in the material presented in this webinar, or if you have questions regarding available course offerings, please contact your local New Horizons Center for further information. You can log on to newhorizons.com and do a zip code search for the center nearest you. And our webinar schedule is also up to date on our website, same website, www.newhorizons.com. Just click on the webinar's link to view the full schedule and register for any upcoming sessions. And a friendly reminder that we will be sending out the recording link to today's webinar later today. So Jeremy, do have some questions here. The first one is, how do I get buy-in to this process from other leaders in my organization?
That is one of my favorite questions, and thank you very much for asking. Well, some people are data driven. So if they want to know, one of the greatest things is that Gallup poll said 87% of the millennial and Gen Z workforce are looking for growth opportunities. Growth opportunities provide 87% is a pretty big number. So 87% said, hey, if we want to take the top talent pool, these are the best looking for that. So there's number one. Number two is talk about what would the organization culture look like. In today's new world, if you will, we're being more diverse, more inclusive than ever before. The other thing that provides us is as those conversations happen, state the opportunity for this change leads to growth, where we're able to pull from many talent pools, no matter the demographic, for their very best. And the last one is the ROI, the return on investment. I gave you one example. There's an 8-to-1 ratio of coaching ROI. So for every dollar spent, there's $8. Training provides similar ROI. There's anyone from 8-to-1 to 17-to-1 ROI. I like to go at a more conservative estimate. The reason why I like to do that is whenever that happens, people are much happier when they find out it's much higher. So there's a couple answers and a couple ways to do that.
Great. Okay, the next one is, what's the biggest mistake that we're making as leaders, and how do we prepare for and avoid that?
Oh, wow. How much time do we have? So one of the biggest mistakes we are making as leaders, the very first one is assumption. Most leaders believe that things are going very well in their organization or very poorly without actually doing the research, or they assume communication is great in their organizations. One of the things that has shown over the last 15 months is that communication and teamwork and collaboration maybe wasn't as strong as a lot of people believed. So assumption is the number one. How to overcome assumption? It's always okay to ask questions. One of the things I love to do in organizations is I tell people I love to do surveys. And before we groan, I like to give surveys that take 30 seconds or less. One of the things we can do with that communication survey is say, hey, how well do you feel the communication is done in the last 15 months? Do you think there's anywhere we can improve our communication? Do you feel working remotely has improved collaboration, or has it made collaboration more difficult? Those are 4 examples of how you can do a survey question. I recommend every survey being 3 questions, no more, no less. And that's an avenue for you to be able to do that. The second leadership challenge is to not actually look and see what's going on in your organization. And that kind of follows very similar to assumption, but people start saying, okay, I'm no longer going to assume, but they don't take the next step to actually look ahead and see what's going on in their organization. The third one is that every organization has a niche. They have a niche they can follow and come and do well. In that niche, what else can you do? Where are your opportunities for growth? A lot of people love to say this statement, hey, we're profitable. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Over the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see not only rapid changes from the pandemic, but we're also going to see new ways of delivery for work and remote learning. People are not going to be, or excuse me, remote work, and people aren't going to be maybe in California like they used to be. In California, there's, I believe, 1 job to 4 people. In the Great Plains region, so you take Kansas up to North Dakota and over to Montana, there's 4 jobs for every 1 person. So with that, remote work is going to start really expanding. And the last thing I would say is that people that are not intentional, I'm talking about leadership, being intentional about growth and following through. One of the things that's out there is many people have said buzzwords, and many of us have probably played buzzword bingo, is not just having synergy as a buzzword, but actually seeing that everybody's working together in the best possible manner. So there's a pretty expansive answer to that question.
Great. Here's another one. How can I be a unique leader?
What can separate you from other people? Okay, so what I'm going to actually, I love to read. I read about 70, 75 books a year. And I have read 2 books this year that I'm absolutely recommending. The first one is a book named named Jeff Henderson. It's a growth strategy for work and an even better strategy for life. If you want to be a unique leader, I highly recommend reading this book. The second one I will tell you is that one, and I actually read it every year, so it's not very fair I said that, is The Power of Positive Reinforcement. Engagement into employees. So as we lean into employees, take time to visit with them. Take 3 to 5 minutes and say, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? What's your greatest challenges? And how can I help? When you say that last piece, how can I help? What will happen is you will start building this thing called trust. People that know, like, and trust you will work for you harder, faster, and give better results. And that will make you unique. Having that open dialogue and communication, holding them accountable, and giving them reinforcement. So whenever they do something you really desire, that's the power of positive reinforcement. Find what motivates them. Sometimes it's a good job. Sometimes that good job is a private email. Sometimes it's in front of everybody. Sometimes it's a token. You give them a Starbucks $5 gift card. There's a lot, and it doesn't always have to be money. Most people go to money. Find something they desire. Give them a certificate, a token. Napoleon Bonaparte has this great quote. It says, it's amazing what a man will do for a little piece of cloth on his chest. That cloth was a piece of ribbon, and that ribbon provided positive reinforcement because it became a desired thing where people started engaging. And from that engagement, we had initiative. So great question there.
Wonderful. The next one is, how do I ask my manager or HR director for development opportunities without making them doubt my intelligence or knowledge?
Oh, wow, that is a wonderful question. So this is what I would tell you. Say, number one, there are two sides of this. We have imposter syndrome and Dunning-Kruger. Imposter syndrome is what a majority of my clients have dealt with. That's people that are well equipped to do their job and they feel ill-equipped. They don't feel like they can. And Dunning-Kruger are people that feel like, hey, I know everything, I accomplish anything, but don't necessarily have the backing, the education, the accomplishments. And most of us land in one of those two areas. So to be able to navigate that, number one, go to your HR manager, says, hey, I have a growth mindset. I'm really good at X, Y, Z. But I've also noticed that I could be better at 1, 2, 3. And when you identify those three things, say, hey, do we have any opportunities so I can expand my skill set to make my organization better? And most HR managers or talent development directors appreciate that opportunity, because what you're also doing is providing them part of their needs analysis. They're like, wow, you actually know what you want. You're wanting to grow. And that gives them the ability, because if you want it, the likelihood of somebody else wanting it is pretty high.
Wonderful. And we have a couple more. And just a reminder, folks, if you have additional questions, we do have time. Feel free to type them in. The next one is there a good place that shows quotes on ROI for employee development to show the value to executives?
Absolutely. I don't know how much time you have, but if you go to McKinsey & Company, they have about 15, 20 articles. Inc.com, Business Insider have articles. Forbes has articles. All of them have many. Gallup research has polls on the ROIs. And I tell you what, there's probably about 60 or 70 articles I read in the last 20 years about the ROI for development. If you go to those 5 places, McKinsey & Company, Gallup, Pew Research Center, Forbes, Business Insider, and Inc., inc.com, like incorporated.com, they will have many articles that prove the ROI out there.
Great. We just had another one come in that I think is a follow-up to the prior question. What do you do if your direct supervisors are ignoring your requests for additional training and coaching to better yourself as a professional?
That is a really tough and great question. So if you were my coaching client, this is what I would tell you is to go ahead and start developing your own personal development plan. So I'm going to go talk about that personal professional development plan. I'm going to go through those 5 steps, and then I'm going to give you the individual application when the HR or those people don't provide that opportunity. Number one, find the current situation. Say, this is my situation. I desire to grow, and my HR manager, talent director, direct supervisor is not interested. So that's your current situation. A career goal. Say, hey, I want to become a manager, leader. I want to expand this piece, whatever space that is. So write down your goals. By the way, the reason why we write down a goal is not to achieve the goal. Why do we buy a boat? It isn't just to buy a boat. It's to be able to go fishing around on the water. So develop a goal and align them. Identify your own skills gap. There's a couple ways to do that. Say, hey, I don't think I'm really good at this. And this is going to be really challenging, this next piece. Ask 3 to 4 people that you trust and say, what are the areas you think I could improve most? And when you ask that question, please don't be offended. Take the time to listen to that skills gap. And from that skills gap, write it down. Then the action step. There are thousands of books. I love to read, and some people aren't readers, and I understand. There are TED Talks, there are books you can buy, there are courses out there that aren't a significant investment that you're able to invest in yourself. My recommendation is start with some TED Talks. I'm a Simon Sinek fan. Simon Sinek, Start With Why. Mel Robbins is another one. I could give you probably 30 or 40 off the top of my head. John Maxwell is a personal mentor to me, so he is a significant contributor to my life. I have my own coach, so I tell people, said, hey, it's important to have that coach. Those are action steps. Say, hey, I'm going to read this book, The Four by Jeff Henderson. That's a great start. And what will happen is over time is those leader developers, those HR people will start noticing. John Maxwell says there's this thing called the leadership lid, and as we raise our lid, we raise our ability to be successful. The lower our lid, the lower our success. And so my recommendation is to buy an audiobook or buy a book. You don't have to spend tons of money. Some people think it costs millions of dollars. That's a great place to start as an individual. And when people start noticing the difference, and the one ROI I guarantee, this is my only guarantee, is that as you grow yourself, as you invest in yourself, you will see a return on investment, not only in your professional life, but also your personal life. What will happen is when people start noticing that you're doing things better, quicker, faster, say, what I've invested in myself, I think we should do in our organization. I've personally seen that happen. I've personally seen that accomplished, and I have seen organizations change because of that.
All right. And my team is multi-generational. I'm looking forward to taking these steps back to them and show them respect. How do I start making sure that they work together and respect one another as well?
So two responses. That's a great question. The very first one is everybody is valuable. I don't care if they're 166 or 4 years old. Everybody is valuable. And how we can do that is using this thing called the platinum rule. The platinum rule is this: treat others as they want to be treated. That's another John Maxwell maxim. He says that, and when we start doing that as an example, so we lead by example first, and then start making that a requirement of your teams to treat others as they want to be treated. What will happen over time is that you will start developing my pleasure, or an example, excuse me, I jumped to my example. You will start developing your teams. There's this organization called Chick-fil-A, and some people don't necessarily like Chick-fil-A, some people don't like chicken, but one of the things that most people agree with is that Chick-fil-A is a phenomenal customer service organization. Well, Truett Cathy, who was the CEO and founder of Chick-fil-A, started saying the words "my pleasure" for a full year before he made it mandatory in his organization. And what has happened is his organization, from his example over that time, has permeated, and now obviously most people know that Chick-fil-A is a phenomenal organization that is known for customer service. So start with yourself, treat others as they want to be treated, and then after you've put a significant amount of time, 6 months to a year, have that a requirement as your team. And you will start seeing people treat each other with a higher level of respect.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, that's the last of our questions, Jeremy. I appreciate your time to speak to us today and appreciate everybody attending. And again, as a reminder, we will be sending out a recording link later today so you can review the session if you would like to. Jeremy, thank you again.
My pleasure.